All right, so survey of art. Now that you've got your value skills done, what we're going to do is a drawing that we call the half and half drawing. So in the packets you picked up from school, if you haven't picked one up yet, you have to email me so that I can set up a time to pick it up or have you pick it up at school or drop it off at your house. Um, in there's a bunch of different photos that you can choose from, and they're all black and white. If you happen to have a printer at home and you want to print off your own black and white picture, by all means, you can totally do that. If we were in school, usually we'd just go and look through a bunch of magazines and find black and white magazines to cut out. But as long as it's in black and white, whatever you want to use, and it's about paper size, like print paper size, that works. But I gave you like 14 different options to choose from. So the idea of what we're going to do is, we're going to cut half of it out, and then we're going to draw the other half. So here's an example I made last year. So I just like love Wizard of Oz. So here's Dorothy, and then some student examples. Here's one that is done. It's from a magazine. Here's another one. The student printed off a picture. Hard to even tell on this one which one is the picture and which one's the drawing. Super good. Here's another one that turned out really nice. Got Johnny Depp. Let's see. This one turned out really great. This one turned out pretty awesome. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Old guy. Wrinkles are kind of fun to do. There's another one that was a magazine cutout. So that's the project that we're going to do. We've always just called it half and half. So you've got a picture, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out. So I'm only going to glue half of this down. Like you saw in some of those examples, you can go down the middle of the person's face. You can't go down the middle here and just draw the gray area. But you want to do half of the person's face at least. So you can go vertically, you can go horizontally, or you can go at a diagonal. Whatever works best for you, whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter if you're doing like the lighter shaded side of their face. Some of them are pretty straight on, so there isn't a definite light or dark. I'm gonna do, I think, just like straight up and down this person's face. So hopefully you have scissors at home. Most people do. I didn't give it to you in your kits just because, like, liability reasons. Try to make as straight of a cut as possible. Usually at school we would do this on a paper cutter, so you get like a really, really straight shot of what you're doing. That wasn't exactly right down the middle of her face, but that's pretty close. So now I'm going to glue half of this down and then draw half of it. I just have some Elmer's glue here. At school we use a glue stick not to make the paper too wrinkly. If you don't have glue, you can actually just take tape and kind of do like the tape tabs on the back side of it, so it wouldn't really matter what kind of tape you had at home. So you take and do some tape tabs on the back side, or glue was like 100 years old. I don't even think it works. So I'll just tape tab this on the back side and then put that onto one of the pieces of paper that you received in your packet. There should be some nicer drawing paper in there. That's about 8 by 12, not just the printer paper. It's a little stiffer than the printer paper, so I would draw on that. And the beauty of this is if you like mess up, you can just cut the whole thing back off again and start over. That's not a big deal. So then I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay this down on my sketchbook paper. I'm going to move over a little bit. Just make sure that's laid out. Now, sorry my video is a little shaky. I'm just on a tripod on here. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this back down. I'm going to line everything up. Actually, first, I'm just going to cut her out perfectly everywhere that I'm going to draw. I'm just going to cut all these edges out. All right, now I'm going to set this down. And I need to know the area that I'm going to draw in so that I can make the proportions of this right. Freehanding is super hard. So I'm going to take the lightest pencil that you have in your kit. So this one's a 2H. You should either have a 2H, an HB, an H, or an F. And I'm just like literally going to trace around the edge of my reference photo so that I know that I'm not going to draw outside the box of what I should be drawing. So now I know that like I can't draw an eyeball way over here. I am in this little zone of working. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a grid on top of here and a grid here. What that's going to help me do is draw proportions really exactly. So I'm going to grid my picture first. So I'm just going to turn this over so I don't accidentally draw on top of it. So I'm going to take from the left side and work over. So from whichever side you're cutting to work over. So I'm going to draw a 1-inch grid on top of this. On here, I can draw as dark as I want to, but when we're drawing into the white of our paper, we actually want to draw really lightly. So 1 inch, 1 inch. So when I'm measuring with this ruler does not start like right at the end of it. It starts about 1 millimeter in. So you have to be careful when you're measuring your photo and starting from that edge. You're not starting from the edge of the ruler, but from that little like millimeter in mark. Otherwise your grids are going to be a little bit messed up. I'm going to line my mark up from the top and the bottom. Do the same thing here. Alright, so now I've got 2 grids. You can see I didn't really cut straight on this edge super well, but that's right. So I'm going to do the same thing down. Again, make sure you're starting at the beginning of like the one line and not actually the edge of your ruler unless that ruler starts there. You all got different rulers, so they're all going to look slightly different. So now I'm going to do my horizontal grid. You can't just do like one measurement of 1 inch on one side and then try to draw it over. If you do, like some of your lines will be kind of janky like this. So make sure you're drawing 2 references on each side so you can line your ruler up with that and then draw straight across. I'm going to push pretty hard on here. That's why I flipped my paper over too, so I'm not drawing on my good final paper that I'm going to actually draw this onto. So I want to be able to see this grid and I can draw it pretty heavy. So now on our reference, we have 1 by 1 inch grids. That's okay, but there's like a little excess here. That's still going to be a usable grid for us. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my paper here. I'm going to line this back up. And now instead of having to measure everything again exactly, I'm going to start by making a mark on my 1 here, my 1 here, all my outside line marks. This is like a really nice, easy, cheat way to not have to like do all your measuring again. I'm just going to slightly pull this away, make a mark again, right where all my lines are. And now I know that everything's going to line up perfectly than if I messed up my measurements again. So now, this part's super important, geez, shakiness, that you draw this really lightly. Do not use the tip of your pencil and draw down. You can almost even see how much of an indent in that paper it makes. You want to use the edge of your pencil and draw really lightly. So, for example, like, you can almost barely see the line I made right there. I was drawing so lightly. But if I try to erase these 2 lines, the one I drew really lightly is gone completely. The one I drew hard is not erasing at all. You have to erase this grid eventually. So do not just like draw super hard with your paper. I'm going to line these guys up, take that edge of my pencil, and like as lightly as possible draw on there. I'm going to probably go just a little bit darker so you can see it on the camera, but you really want to make sure you're not indenting into the paper with your pencil. That grid is drawn super light. You can almost not see it. I drew the second line a little bit darker just so you could see it better, but you really want to make sure that this grid is drawn as light as possible. Otherwise, it's not going to be fun for you when you try to erase it later on. Because we don't want to leave this grid on this lovely lady's face. And I don't want to grid into my drawing here either, because that would look weird. Forgot a line, so I'm going to reline this up. Okay. So right now I have two grids that look similarly. Like, it's hard to see that line because it's so light, but now I'm ready to actually transfer that image. The beauty of using a grid is that I can look over here and know exactly where my proportions are going to be and if they're wrong. So if I'm looking at her hijab here, I hope I said that right, I can tell that it doesn't take up this entire first square. So I know that this little edge here, and something I'll do sometimes is I'll actually break these squares into half even further so that I can see that it doesn't hit the half mark here. It's a little bit north of there, and then it almost is exactly half on this square and a little bit farther than half here. So as I start drawing that, it's just at the top of the page here, comes down definitely a little bit less than, a little bit above half, and then right at half. And then it comes down a little bit on the outside edge there, comes in a little bit. And again, right now I'm sketching super lightly because if I mess up my proportions, I can just redraw them again. And I can always check myself like where I'm at. I'm like over 2 grids, down 1, 2, 3, over 2 grids, down 1, 2, 3. I'm entering that 4th grid, and then I should end up over towards the edge. And then this actually goes off into my weird little mini grid that goes off the page for the outside edge of that. So then I can decide, starting in like where her forehead is, I'm down 2. I'm definitely more than halfway down. I'm like a quarter, almost like a third of that. And I can see that that lines up with this here. It hits just the edge of this paper here. Comes off to right about half of this one. A little bit less here. Nope, I kind of messed that up. Go a little bit inside more. So now I'm kind of just like working on that jaw line. So just check myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little bit more than half. This should probably come in a little bit. Nope, definitely went too far down because this next grid. I'll lighten it up a little bit. So now I can go back in and erase any of my mess up marks up. And now I've got proportions of her face, like where her chin line is, pretty well done. Another thing I can do is I can kind of look at it like this and kind of peek over and make sure I'm in the right spot. Don't push down through this onto your paper to make a mark. That is like a no cheaties. And the reason why, that would work great if it didn't indent your paper. And when it indents your paper, when you try to draw back over it again, that indent line is still there. So don't do the cheaties. Gridding is cheating enough, and it makes it really actually easy to get your proportions down. So once you have your grid down, basically the first thing you're going to do is just lightly draw all your proportions. So if I'm going for her eye now, I know that it doesn't quite go into here. It definitely is like a little bit lower than half where the tip of her eye is, and it doesn't take up the whole square. So I've got to kind of work that eye in and just get a general layout for where it's at. I'm not going to worry about proportions yet, which is going to make it look kind of weird. Definitely went a little too high. But then if I look at this drawing, her head is a little tilted, so her eye is a little bit higher. Some things, especially to start off with, are gonna look a little kajanky. Make sure you're always looking at your reference picture more than you're looking at your actual paper, because your eye is gonna be like, well, I think this is how it should be, but that's not really how it should be. Our memory, even like our short-term memory, lies to us. So right now, again, really just trying to get placement down of the major proportions. So for my first day, I don't want to see any value. I want to see the major components done in just proportion. So your assignment for today is to decide which picture you want to use, cut it in half, lay it down, get your grid situated, and start putting your proportions on. So you should have your value scale should be done, your form should be done, that should be turned in this morning. Today you're going to work on this portion, and I'm going to have you check in with where you're at tomorrow. So tomorrow I want you to turn in a picture of what you achieved today. If that's just the grid and getting some of the proportions done, that's fine. I want to see that you got your grid done properly before you move on. So I'm going to post that assignment for you. Please make sure you watch the video. See ya.